Hi, I'm Melissa May, and this is Little Book of Confessions, a podcast about the stories we keep, the truths that shape us, and the messy, beautiful in between. What started as my journal turned into a space for raw conversations, anonymous confessions, and unfiltered reflections on life, work, identity, and everything we're not saying out loud. If you're figuring it out as you go, you're not alone. Let's confess, because some secrets deserve to be told. Trigger warning. Little Book of Confessions is a space for honest, unfiltered storytelling. Episodes may include discussions of trauma, mental health, abuse, sexual assault, addiction, self-harm, suicidal ideation, grief, identity struggles, and other sensitive or difficult subjects. Please take care while listening. Pause or skip episodes if you need to. Your well-being comes first. One thing that I used to be embarrassed about is the fact that I didn't have a bachelor's degree. I graduated high school in the 90s. Yes, I'm from the late 1900s. And I didn't have the opportunity to go to college. I had applied, gotten into a lot of schools, gotten the ROTC scholarship, but I was only 17 when I graduated and went through a lot with my mom where she wouldn't sign any papers for me to include financial aid. I had gotten into several colleges that were actually really, really good colleges. I lettered in academia. I had the Army ROTC scholarship, all of this, but it wasn't enough. So more behind that story later, but what I just wanted to share is that something that I was embarrassed about because a lot of my friends, people I knew were going to college, and I was working 3 jobs and putting myself through a community college. And one thing that I discovered is that I came into my career through very non-traditional ways, but I found a lot about myself, just the strength, the things I was willing to do, the hours I would work, the tasks I would pick up, the willingness to learn and research and network and meet people. And the reason why I'm thinking about this is last week I did a mentoring circle with some people who were a bit more junior in their career, and they were asking some really important questions. And I, at one point, was giving advice, and I just had told them, and also realizing, do I sound like a very like antiquated person giving advice? But I really said, it's about grit. It's about building community and a network of people who will like really advocate for you. And it's about saying yes to any opportunity that you think that you can learn and make movement. There is no secret sauce to getting a career and launching it right away. Yes, some people do come from places of privilege. I 100% recognize that. And what I've seen over my 20 plus years in recruiting is that, yes, those people can succeed and move forward, but it's the people who actually are a bit scrappier, that come from adversity, who have learned to say yes and lean in, and there's nothing that's below them and there's nothing above them that they're not willing to strive for. So that's one of the things I want to talk about is, how do you create a space for yourself where you can like build a career that's meaningful for you, impactful, but also you have to recognize that you have to work hard for it. So I think one of the things I think about is the shame that I had around that. So maybe I worked extra hard. I was a woman. Worked extra hard. I didn't come from money. I had nothing to fall back on if I didn't succeed in what I was doing in the moment. So yes, I worked crazy hours. Yes, I experimented with different roles. Like I did everything from waiting tables for years to I had mid-20s crisis. I'll admit that, where I did leave the corporate world for a little bit and I went down to try to live on the beach, and it was a really interesting experience. But even when I was there, I was a magician's assistant. I was selling insurance. I was selling ads on pharmaceutical bags. This only lasted a few months before I realized, okay, I really need to make money. And so I started waiting tables. I had that to fall back on. But then ultimately, I was getting job offers back in the DC area where I was from because I had worked so hard to build a career for myself. So I finally did move back there after, I think it was 6 months at the beach, and really began launching my career even further from there. But the thing that I tell people, and the thing that I experienced is as long as you keep moving and you have momentum and you have something you're working towards, like that will always open opportunities for you. I was laid off almost 2 years ago too, and it was really, really difficult. I have never been out of work. In fact, I've worked since I was a kid. I started babysitting when I was in single digits. I started waiting tables, or not waiting tables, but I was a hostess at a restaurant. Then I started waiting tables, but I started that when I was 15. I never took a break, even between jobs. I was always maybe just taking a few days in between, because in my mind, it was always the hustle. I always had to keep moving, I always had to have momentum. And so when I was even laid off and the market was tough, and I knew a lot of people who were going through layoffs, sometimes two, three, four layoffs. Some people couldn't find jobs for a very long time. Some people still can't. And when I was going through that, I decided to open two companies. And yes, I'm still working on them both. It's been a lot to manage that, but I started a refurbishing, and I went out and I learned how to be a business person. I took all these classes and I signed up with SBA and got a lot of advice, and I just formed LLC. I started making connections and building infrastructure. Then I started my coaching business, which yes, I'm still working on that too. And then I was doing Rover. I just watched dogs, and I was going to people's houses and watching dogs. I was doing it for my friends. And yes, it was extra money on top of the savings that I had and the severance that I had received, but it was also a way for me to keep moving forward and keep my brain active, keep my heart and mind happy. I had puppies around me all the time. And more importantly, it was just I had that work ethic to keep pushing forward. I kept myself relevant and in touch with my network. And even though some days were so brutally difficult, I mean, this is also when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which had started to affect me a few months before the layoff. And there was a lot of stress, involved there. And so I was practically bedridden for a while too. And so there's a lot of things that happen to people where it just starts like piling up. So when I'm thinking about the advice that I'm giving and I think about where I come from and the way I have had to build my career over the years, I think it's been grit. I think it's been determination. I don't care what I'm doing as long as I keep moving forward. And I know that's really difficult to do. And it's difficult to hear that some of these things could be painful and long term. But I also think that I am resourceful. I will never, ever be dead in a ditch. Yes, I will admit that. The dark side, that was my biggest fear. Coming from where I came from, not having anything to fall back on. My biggest fear was if I stop moving, I will be I will lose everything, my home, whenever I had a car, if I had a car, but I would lose all my finances. I would be penniless, hopeless, laying in a ditch and dying. And again, I know that's super dark and morbid, but that's what kept driving me for better or worse. And I think over the years, I learned how to balance that. And I did, like, even before the layoff, I have reached levels of success where I'm like, when can I just stop and enjoy this? Like, I have a house, I have money in the bank. I haven't been in debt for a really long time. That's something I can talk about more later too, but I got out of debt in my mid to late 20s and haven't been in debt since. But I think about what am I running from still? Why am I so scared? I have a million people in my life that would never let me fail. Even if something didn't work out with a business or a job, like I would always have a place to be. And I think my vulnerability and my reaching out to this community and sharing that with them reflecting who I am back to me and just letting me know, man, they be like, girl, you've done so much in your life. You have really, really succeeded. You're strong, and this is just a tough time. You can do this. And so being able to see myself reflected back in the community that I worked so hard to build was like a lifesaver for me. And I was also thinking about this other thing too. I was setting up my office and my studio and everything, and I'm just trying to think like, what do I want to have surrounding me? I was thinking about the places I've come, the places I've been. And I was going through this old box of stuff because I am somewhat of a hoarder. I have a bunch of stuff from when, well, not a ton of stuff from when I was a kid, but as I kept a few things. And then growing up and through the years, and I always just kept that so I could have memories of what I've been through and what I've accomplished. And I had this folder just filled with all these certificates and achievements and all of this sort of thing. And I decided I don't have a college degree, but you know what? I've been really successful. And you know what? I've been doing this since I was a kid. So I have this display. Maybe I'll share a picture of it later, but it has when I was in the National Honor Society when I was, I think, 10 or 11. It has where I've lettered in academia. It has um, just like I won this math contest when I was like 10 or 11. That's also the year where I was diagnosed with being, I guess, diagnosed, I don't know, labeled, I don't know the correct term, and I know it's controversial, these tests, but as being gifted and talented. I just really always had a thirst for knowledge, and despite everything I'd been through too during those few years of being taken from my dad and going with my mom and living in, oh my gosh, when I was 9, I went to 5 schools in just that one year. But then that year, the next year, I was still making great grades. I was still proud of who I was and what I wanted to do. And so I actually hung that on my wall instead because I realized that's what I have to be proud of, that despite everything, despite, because of everything I'd been through, I still always look to myself and look to what I was worthy of and could accomplish. I never shied away from leaning into my potential. And I don't know, I held those papers and I was crying and I just was so proud of, that kid that I was. And sometimes people say, think about the little girl inside or the little boy or like the little person that you used to be. And like you would want to be kind to them. So why aren't we kinder to ourselves as adults? So I thought about that and I felt really proud and I felt really connected to that time and space. And I thought about, well, okay, even if I never got a college degree, which by the way, I'm only 6 classes away, I think. I did put myself through school for a while, well into my 20s, and then I started making more money and being more successful and on a career trajectory than people that I knew that had gone to college. And not that that's a comparison. Money is not a comparison. I think success is where you feel comfortable in your life and you're pursuing things that are important. But I just thought to myself, okay, I'm doing something. I'm in a role here. I am doing something I love to do. And so, anyways, when I look back, I just, instead of being embarrassed that I just happened to be born into this family and had these certain circumstances and had to take a different path in life, I've always been who I am. And I'm proud of that. And I would just say if I'm giving advice to people who are maybe younger in their career, if you're making a career change, if you're facing really hard times, there is not going to be one single thing that you can do. Like nobody's going to hand you something, probably not. And if they do, you're probably not going to appreciate it as much as if you had earned it yourself. But I would just say be persistent. Remember who you are and who you always have been, and go to the people who will remind you of that too. And do the thing, even if you don't even know where it's going to go, if it's going to be successful, if it's not, the thing that's worse, like on the other side of not trying, is you'll never know what you could have accomplished, who you could have met, what you could have done in your life. But if you just do something, you have no idea who you're going to meet or what you'll accomplish or where life will take you. And I just want to leave us on that note that don't be embarrassed by your circumstances. Be proud. Be proud. Oh, I'm going to cry. Be proud of what you've been able to do with your life because your life is worth it and you're meaningful. And people are out there that appreciate you, they cherish you, and you've inspired them at some point. So I just say, don't be embarrassed by the little things in life that really don't actually even matter, and really take the time to take inventory of who you are. Thank you for joining today, and let's just keep on talking about these things. Let's confess. Let's take the air out of these embarrassing situations, quote unquote, or secrets, because they're really just amazing stories who tell us who you are. Thank you for listening to Little Book of Confessions. If something in this episode stirred something in you, good. That's what we're here for. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at melissamay.me. Until next time, keep writing your truth, and remember, some secrets deserve to be told.